Well, folks, we really appreciate your patience. We were having sound problems with everybody. Everybody restarted their computers. And so I'm just going to get going and we will just wing it as we go. My name is Alice Hutchinson and I own Birds Books. And I am the proud owner of Birds Books, but the proud host of Right America. The aim of this series is to help set the country back on a correct, productive course of freedom, justice, equality, and plain human kindness. Right America is a literary series created by author Roger Rosenblatt, featuring award-winning, nationally renowned authors and new and emerging writers in readings and conversations each week about how books and art might bridge the deep divisions in our nation. Right America celebrates the quiet power of art in our lives and unifying power of the highest uses of language. In novels, stories, essays, and poems, we recognize one another as parts of the human family, one family. Roger Rosenblatt, the creator of Right America, puts it this way: writing makes justice desirable, evil intelligible, grief endurable, and love possible. So, welcome, and please join us every Monday evening at this time as many of the most beloved and distinguished writers in the country read from their works and talk to each other and with you in an effort to bring us together. If you missed last week's episode with Emily Bernard and Kurt Anderson, or any of the previous episodes of Right America, you can go to Birds Books Crowdcast channel and watch the recordings at any time. Tonight's episode is also being recorded, so if you missed something, you can go back and rewatch. Tonight, Birds Books hosts a reading by and conversation with, let's hope, Elizabeth Hawes Weinstock, Ursula Hegi, and Vijay Seshadri. I will return at the end after the readings and discussion to bring your questions and comments to the authors. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with Crowdcast, you've obviously found the chat to the right, and I'm really glad. Please feel free to comment throughout the evening. But if you have a question for the authors, there's an Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your screen. Please ask it there, and that's where I'll go to look for your questions. Third, there's a link to Birds Books event page, and that's this night's event. We have the author's books there in case you'd like to purchase them, but you can also link and share and look at all the other episodes in Right America series. Now, let's see who's on, because I'm going to introduce whoever's made it to the screen. Vijay. So our first speaker is Vijay Seshadri. He is the author of Wild Kingdom in 1996, The Long Meadow, which won the James Lowton Award, and 3 Sections, which won the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. The Pulitzer Committee described the book as a compelling collection of poems that examine human consciousness from birth to dementia in a voice that, as by turns witty and grave, compassionate and remorseless. Seshadri has received fellowships from New York Foundation for the Arts, the NEA, and the Guggenheim Foundation. He has worked as an editor at The New Yorker and has taught at Sarah Lawrence College, where he currently directs the graduate nonfiction writing program. His new book of poetry, That Was Now, This Is Then Poems, was published in 2020 and came out in paperback in January of this year. Please welcome to the screen Vijay Seshadri. And I will. Thank you for putting up with all that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's, something I've been through before, so it didn't bother me at all. So, Alice, how long should I read? Because I guess Alice is gone.
No, I'm here. You can read, I'd say 10 to 15 minutes, or when you hit an organic stopping point.
Okay, I will read, I'll just read a few poems because my book came out in paperback. I'll read the poems at the end of that book. This past year, I've been writing prose, and a lot of the prose has to do with America only peripherally. The piece I'm working on now is about Bangladesh, where I spent some time a few years ago. And I didn't think it was appropriate, given the context of Right America, to take you so far away. So I'm going to read some of the poems from the end of my book, my recent book, That Was Now, This Is Then. starting with North American Sequence. And as many of you know, that's also a title of a great Theodore Rutke poem, and one that I have always loved. And when I came up with the idea of the poem, that wasn't the title, but then I realized I was stealing from Rutke at the beginning, so I felt I had to somehow acknowledge him. So I just stole his title too. North American Sequence. Not liberation exactly, but at least a relief to know that after another long, exasperating journey into the South, the meadows choked with pigweed, the coppices deranged, the spinneys disheveled, the fosses slimed and slippery, the Chevy Impalas, their tires stripped, rusting on concrete blocks in the front yards, the roads sunk under mud, the hills on fire, the crocodile deltas. You can emerge and re-enter the public sphere and make yourself presentable again as someone other people can look at and look past in the sphere they inhabit, the globe of reason and sphere of discourse, pure and simple, where to observe and anatomize its latest structural transformation into an even more unthinkable strangeness is a species of fun, and also a part of the strangeness. And what a relief that no one in the public sphere cares really who or what you are. They're all busy making gossip out of experience. They're all indifferent to traumas, yours or theirs. They're all fed up with the inner life. The inner life was a big misunderstanding with unfortunate historical consequences. There are, though, some fine buildings here, oblong, square, round, tall, short. The tall ones very tall, the short ones short enough. And the inhabitants also are tall and short, square and round, white and black and brown, denizens, loving their geometries, their symmetries, while their destinies diversify in the dry, lightly scented air. How anybody could love destinies like theirs is something you don't have to worry about. What is asked of you only is that you listen to their voices, their orisons, vows, shouts of joy, their raging, hateful imprecations, their love chats and griefs, joining with other voices to form a stream of voices, among other streams that will unite in rivers blue as the sky is blue, and flow to the cobalt ocean, there to swell its waters until the pressure of the swelling becomes so great the waters particulate, evaporate again, and rise lighter than air, rise and rise to come athwart the cold of space, the killing cold, the touch of which crystallizes their essences, so that they fall as snow and bury in concave blowing drifts another lost neighborhood of the public sphere, abandoned now to the blizzard and to you, the solitary walkers standing in an itinerant pool of light below the single street lamp, in the neighborhood where once, 50 years apart, were born Al Capone, Chicago gangster, and Jenny Jerome, Winston Churchill's mother. This one is called Soliloquy. It's actually a dramatic monologue, but you'll understand as I go along why it's called Soliloquy. Soliloquy. All the experts say I'm sane. Some even say I might acquire insight someday. Some even introduce me to their kids. What could be more reassuring than that? Also, When it comes to my body, I like it, and I care for it. I read the latest research. My diet is 80-20 alkalinity to acidity. My body is a temple wherein my spirit, in which I also believe, like any other normal person, is sublimely housed. So why on a train platform just before the engine barrels in do I feel a thrill rising from my groin to my solar plexus and imagine jumping? Why on a puddle hopper from one mid-sized Midwestern city to another, going from one sales meeting to another? And I not only like myself, I like my job. Our market share is growing, business class is great, the leg room and the free drinks. Do I watch myself unbuckling my seatbelt, creeping down the aisle, wrenching counterclockwise the emergency exit's cold, recalcitrant shank, kicking open the door to the beautiful and spacious skies, and plunging 5 miles down, past the goshawks rising on their thermals, plunging to America and its billowing farms, with fields dotted here and there, with big lozenges of hay wrapped in white plastic, moist with the morning dew. Every time, the exquisite acceleration down the steeples of the air, 32 feet per second, the overheated mind ventilating at last, the ground coming up very fast, though not to hit the ground. No, no. What a piece of work that would turn out to be. Or to be slammed like a caddisfly against the train's bullet head, traumatizing the poor, pitiable engineer. A guy just like me doing his job, and suddenly he finds himself face to face with horror? No, not that, never that, but simply for the moment before the last, the penultimate moment, and the moment inside the penultimate moment, and the moment inside that, and that, and that. I have heard it said, I have heard it is written, I have read of it, and I have understood by reasons light within me that the moment I am speaking of stretches across eternity and never moves on to become the next moment. And to be suspended inside it is to see our pinpoint presence among the stars reversed, and the stars themselves coalescing into a perfect orb small enough to hold in the palm of the hand, from the center of which being shall look into your eyes. Who wouldn't jump for a chance at that? Yesterday, in the General Mitchell International Airport, in the city of Milwaukee, in the state of Wisconsin, I was served an arresting fortune cookie at the Chinese restaurant there. It read, "Life cries out, be, O ancient sages of the Middle Kingdom. Of course, of course." And I'll end with the last poem in the book. It's called To the Reader, and you can amend that to the listener. I'm writing this so I can tell you that what you're thinking about me is exactly what I'm thinking about you. What you're reading is exactly what you're writing by the light of a taper deep inside yourself at your walnut secretary. These words are saying what those words say, and these and those are those and these, mine and yours, and have no meaning, only form. Talk about being one with others. We correspond one to one. you and I, and there is a grandeur in this. You'll understand that someday. Just now, though, you're stupefied at this spooky action at a distance. So would I be, and I am. Thank you.
No, thank you. That was just beautiful. Our next speaker, this is provided technology gods are listening, is Ursula Hegi. She is the author of over a dozen books, including Stones from the River, Children and Fire, Floating in My Mother's Palm, and Tearing the Silence. The German-born writer, she emigrated to the United States at 18. She has served as juror for the National Book Award and the National Books Critics Circle, and is the recipient of more than 30 grants and awards. Ursula lives with her family on Long Island and has taught writing at Stony Brook, UC Irvine, and Bernard College. And if everything goes as planned, I will be welcoming her to the screen. But I am finding her in the puddle of people here. Ursula, I hope you can join us because I just invited you to the screen. Frank. Oh, Frank's our technical help, so Frank is trying to get her. So we're all cheering Frank because.
There. Okay.
Oh my goodness. This is a wonderful miracle. Thank you so much.
Well, Frank is a genius. I've worked with him before, and I had every confidence. So
here we go.
I've been thinking a lot about immigrants during the last few years, and so I decided to go back to The Vision of Emma Blau, which is a book about immigrants around 1900 coming from Germany to the United States. First, Stefan Blau arrives. He leaves home at 13, runs away, gets to New York. He marries when he's about 19. His wife dies in childbirth. He marries again. With the second birth, his second wife dies, and he decides to go back to Germany. It's been about 15 years at least, and to ask the girl next door if she wants to marry him. What he doesn't know is that Helene has been in love with him since they were very young. And this is chapter 3. She is very, very awkward. He brings her to in New Hampshire, there's Lake Winnipesaukee, and I invented a town called Winnipesaukee. He builds an incredible mansion, an apartment building, and he brings her there. While Helena craved words that fit her thoughts, words that didn't feel so unfamiliar, the people of Winnipesaukee mistook her silence for snobbery. They saw her as a proud woman who kept herself apart from them. They didn't understand that she had always seen herself as smart, capable, and now felt frustrated in a new language where she could barely make herself known. They had no idea how confused she was by the lack of formality. Americans told her, "I'll see you," and she wanted to ask when, but they didn't visit. Was it because she didn't respond properly? Though she had studied English in school, it was much harder speaking the language than reading or hearing it. Often she'd feel so slow that she'd stay silent rather than risk not being understood. Huh? People would ask, and if she'd repeat what she just said, they'd ask again, forcing her to repeat herself 3 or 4 times until she was whispering with embarrassment. Living in America was a constant shifting between discovery and loss. She liked it how the houses were separated by gardens, not constructed side against side as in Germany. Like, excuse me. She liked the vastness of her new country, the dense forests, the mountain tops that held snow till late in spring. But she didn't like the taste of lamb, a bit wild, she thought. American shoes were flimsy, she decided. And though the town's major industry was a shoe factory that shipped merchandise throughout this country, she tried to substitute what she missed. Walking along the lake and watching the reflections of the house and trees and islands would remind her of the Rhine and the meadows along its banks and made her miss the Rhine River somewhat less. She'd swim in the lake, read by its shore, row the children out in the wooden boat. And because she missed the written words that had formed the intimate connection between her and Stefan for 17 years, so much more satisfying to be with him in letters than in person, she began to write to him again, fervent notes in German that she would hide and never show him, letters in which she didn't have to hold back with her love for him or with her anger, letters that after her death, her granddaughter Emma would find in a red cake tin behind Helene's shoes in the armoire. Assuming her grandfather had received every one of these letters, Emma would construct a history of passion and understanding between her grandparents and resolve that this was the kind of love she wanted for herself. Helena became impatient with herself. She didn't want to wrap her life around Stefan or his absences. Back at home, she'd had her achievements as a teacher to balance this yearning for him. She'd had her brother and best friend and neighbors and colleagues. But here, she only had Stefan's children who reminded her of his dead wives and a language that got in the way of connecting to others. All her life, she had thought of herself as intelligent, but in this new country, she couldn't even work as a teacher, at least not until the language would become as familiar as the one she'd grown up with. In this country, she only had things because her husband provided them. It was enough to feel lacking as a mother and a wife. About the language, she could do something. Although Stefan spoke English with ease, she didn't want him to become the voice to link her to his world. Determined to make this new language her own, Helena borrowed books from the library and struggled through them even if she only absorbed every fourth or fifth word. But she finished them for herself and went back for others. Sometimes in public, she felt embarrassed by her accent, but Stefan assured her it would come together in time. It's gradual, he told her. At least for me it was. It got easier once I started thinking in English. He gave her suggestions on how to speak better, reminded her when she forgot to push her tongue forward in the Z sound and said Z instead of the. The R that he'd worked on so hard sounded like an L with her. And if she had a word that has both a TH and an R, she sounded as though she'd just stepped off the boat, like wanting to say 3 and having it come out as sli. Christmas, Helena, her first Christmas there, decorates the Christmas tree the way she did at home, with dozens of burning wax candles. And when Stefan comes in, he flies at the candles with his breath, his hands. He tries to explain the danger to her, and Helena says, we always have candles on the tree in Germany. She kept her voice steady for the children, though her body was shaking. Always doesn't count in America. He was circling the pine, kicking aside wrapped presents as he splattered wax and singed his fingertips. Helena's wax Madonna toppled from the crown of the tree and landed sideways on the floor. I don't know of a single house, she said, that burned because of candles. And that's why you're trying to burn. You're not being reasonable. You know what it's like when a house burns, when people burn to death? It was there in every one of your letters for over a year, yes. All fires, he said, start with one little flame. Yeah, but not all flames turn into huge fires. I forbid you to use candles on the tree again. She felt its fear as though it had a body of its own and was about to attack her. Forbid? She raised her chin. Forbid? She asked once more as she led its children from the room. It was the only time Stefan would ever speak to her like that. In bed that night, he said he was sorry, and as he talked to her about the Hungarian and the others who had died in the restaurant fire, she held him. Yet she was still angry. What confused her was how grateful she felt to have Stefan in her arms. She did not want to be grateful to any husband for allowing her to touch him. It only made her angrier. And that was good, because anger was much clearer. Anger kept her separate from him, gave her the sudden boldness to take him, roughly almost, using his shock to straddle him, cage him between her thighs, her arms. What is this, he said, and then laughed, flustered, and said her name as if to remind her who she was. Lenchen, he said. Helene. But already he was raising his face toward hers as she weighed him down with her breasts and her belly, crushed herself against him till his body thrashed to meet hers, escaped into her, although he twisted away before she could fill herself with him. Thank you. Okay, Frank, what's happening?
Hello. Do you so Alice is just having a few technical issues right now. Ursula, do you have more? I think we might have our next reader.
I was your previous reader.
You were. Alice is controlling this, but for some reason she can't get up on screen. So she's elected me, and I'm on with the next reader right now. So I'm wondering if you, by any chance, have another poem that you might want to share with us.
Yeah, sure. Unless Ursula has something more she wants to read. Ursula? No?
Oh, I think the floor is all you.
Oh, okay. Okay. I will. Hi, everyone. I'm back. To fill in, I guess I'll just read the one poem of the last four that I didn't read. This one is called The Estuary. It also is located in America. While we're waiting for the tech people. And, you can think of it as a little interlude, as in Lawrence of Arabia or Dr. Zhivago, where there's an intermission and there's music while we wait for the second half of the film. The Estuary. The brown bear living near the estuary and wading out when the tide swells and the salmon run. During the days of the dwindling salmon runs, and slapping with his big right paw a hook-nosed fish whipsawing inland to spawn. The ambidextrous bear, furred like the forest from which he emerged, waddling into the unteachable waters to swat the salmon out the fast-running tide and catch the red salmon in his mouth and toss and juggle the sockeye salmon, thrashing and drowning in the air. And when he's expressed himself completely, he catches with his jaw the self that swam 10,000 miles to the estuary, and daintily, mincingly, with one paw grasping the caudal fin and the other the head, eats that salmon as if he were we and the fish and ear of boiled corn. That bear is a bear about whom rich and complicated feelings can be felt. That is a bear from whom ideas about the state of nature can be derived. Cruelty is the wrong word to describe the pleasure he gets from playing with his lunch. Play and life are the same thing to him. Art and life, life and death. Creation impinging on a consciousness, clear and crystalline. Pinpoint revelatory explosions unsoiled by words, unbesmirched. Creation clambering out of the waters, shaking itself off. Creation surrounding itself with itself. Stay down on the pavement where you just fell in a heap, like a bag of laundry. Just stay there. Move even a little and you might damage something else. You've already done plenty of damage. Stay down, supine, stay down, and let the giant buildings loom over you. Let them in their abstract imperium stun you with their indifference. Wasn't that the reason you built them in the first place? Stay down, and ask yourself, could I be the bear in this fable? Could I be the fish? Could I be whoever is imagining all this?
I'm here, and I have to apologize to both of you for this awful technical evening, but I'm going to leave you two to discuss a few things, and if we could get Betsy on, it would be great, but I think we're just going to, let you guys spend some time together and with us.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. You have a line in one of your poems that has haunted me. You're speaking to someone who is dead, and I'm probably totally wrecking the line, but as you didn't even tell me before you were dead. Do you remember the line? Or how does it go?
Right. Yeah, that's a poem to my friend Tom Lux, a poet whom I suspect a lot of people who are, watching this knew. And
yeah.
yeah, I let me see if I can find it. It goes something like, I suppose I should know it by heart, right? But after I write them, I don't read them anymore. Well, that's
yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, hold on a second. Right. You said before you died that this would happen. Thanks for the warning. You didn't let me know, though, that even our phantom selves would come after us.
You didn't even let me know. Yeah. I find that haunting. I find that it reaches into a direction of communication that I haven't quite experienced that way. Mm-hmm. Like it a lot, in other words.
Yeah. It's interesting what you read and what you were saying about immigration and being an immigrant. I came here in the Eisenhower era when I was very small. I was a little over 5, and it took Donald Trump for me to realize that I was an immigrant, you know. And, you know, and it's an uncomfortable thing being an immigrant, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can never be comfortable, right? You know, Auden famously said about immigrants, people who leave a place, that they don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want,
Yeah.
which is why they move. And, you know, and it would be nice to have some sort of corresponding and symmetrical phrase about being an immigrant, you know, but I've never really been able to formulate one. But it's really interesting how, after having gone through many phases of American life, this is where I've landed, you know, that like it's a perpetual state of becoming in some way, and and never quite arriving. You're just always, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I identify with many immigrants, even though we come from different directions.
Sure.
What we share is this place, and it varies for all of us, between our country of origin and our adopted country, that border. And that border keeps shifting.
Sure.
And when I left Germany, I just wanted to get away from there. And I've written about Germany a lot, and I've been very hard on my parents' generation for their silence. But with Trump and with Bush too, even though we protested, even though we wrote and wrote, we didn't make a damn difference. And it made me look at their generation with perhaps with different questions. But I think this I don't want to call it limbo, but the border that keeps shifting. Do you find that too? That it doesn't stay the same, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, and sometimes it's to one's advantage, and sometimes it's a real disadvantage, and, you know, and there's always that underlying state. You know, I taught a class today, and was talking to my students, and I was saying, well, we were talking about kind of a piece of writing one of the students had done, which didn't resolve because the student hadn't quite recognized the contradiction in her original idea. And I was saying to them, well, you know, the real spiritual dilemma of our moment is ambivalence. You know, we're all in a state of ambivalence. I mean, we're just sort of so much a part of public discourse now. And no one can quite resolve it. I mean, we feel 2, 4, 5 things about just about every issue. And, you know, all of the brouhaha about freedom of speech, someone's something that's, you know, considered.
You mean the way it's being turned around to become a political weapon, or?
Well, no, in that, you know, there is speech we find objectionable, but we all kind of subscribe to the notion of freedom of speech. So we're caught on a pin between, you know, we're wriggling there in this ambivalence. And, you know, and I think the thing about, if there is a sort of silver lining to having an immigrant consciousness right now, it's that, you know, one is more comfortable with ambivalence, you know, with always sort of not having things resolved.
Yeah, and there is the concept of being the other. And for me, coming from Germany, especially, I came over in 1965, I encountered some of that. And I occasionally, in films, there is a stereotyping of the German. And I sort of cringe, but it's nothing compared to what dark-skinned Americans experience on a daily basis. I think of the the immigrants, the potential immigrants trying to reach the country now, and this country. And the most uncomfortable thing that happened for me as an 18-year-old was having to fill out all kinds of questions. And I'd come out of a Catholic boarding school, and there was the question, have you ever been a prostitute? So
Amazing.
it was amazing. Yeah, I thought it was funny, but it was startling at the same time. And so immigration was a lot easier at that time. I needed a sponsor. I, got my American citizenship after my first son was born. And it's weird, all those stages. What do you remember best of your immigration? I mean, you were a child, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have vivid memories. And that was at the beginning of kind of general jet travel. When my father had come here to get his PhD, he had come on a boat.
Same year.
Right. But when he came back to India and fetched my mother and me because he had a postdoctoral fellowship here, we went by plane. And the glamour of that, the glamour of international air travel, I could feel, I was very small, but I could sense that this was an enormous thing, to be carried in a jet plane. And in those days, I think we must have flown from Bombay, and all flights to and from India stopped in Beirut.
Okay.
At night, and then we flew to London, and we stayed in London, I think, about a month, and then we flew.
Yeah. What year was that, Vijay?
It was 1959.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was still glamorous at that time, air travel.
Sure. Yeah. And I think luxurious too.
Yeah.
Or one had a sense of luxury. I remember luxury. And, and I think a lot about what it must be like to kind of, because most immigrant journeys, I think most journeys that people undertake from one civilization to another, they don't have that kind of technical ease historically.
Yeah.
I mean, even people who came to America in the period of American immigration, had to endure hardship.
Oh, they did. Yeah. And there was always more hardship for some groups than for others.
Sure.
There were
Absolutely.
quotas. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
But with what's happening now, it's not just now, but I mean, in the last decade, made me think about it in a different way. I am an immigrant. It's part of who I am as much as being a writer. It shapes us in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No. Where do you live?
I live on Long Island.
Yeah.
Eastern Long Island. How about you?
I live in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And of course, this is the city to which immigrants kind of,
Yeah.
This is the immigrant city par excellence, from the time of the Dutch, really,
I went to New Jersey when I came over.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. That's why, even though New York has been a very tough town for me in various periods of, once I got here, I didn't get here until I was in my late 20s, but I got here, I said, well, this is really the only place in the country that I can, live comfortably or just feel, well, I mean, as in that poem, the first one that I read, the city is kind of bisected and intersected with all these different people, you know.
Yeah.
And you don't feel, I mean, there are ethnic enclaves still, and there were certainly ethnic enclaves when I got here.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it was very much a multiracial, multicultural city
Yeah.
already by then, the early 1980s when I moved here. And, you know, one didn't have a sense of, one wasn't aware of oneself as being distinct and different from everyone else, you know.
Okay.
Would be if you were an Indian, as I was growing up in the rest of America, you know, you just kind of felt like, well, I don't have to be conscious of myself in that way, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that consciousness is a tremendous burden,
Yeah.
you know, and in many cases, it can be a circumstance that's invidious, but even if it isn't, you know, the consciousness itself is kind of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you just want to go live your life and not have to think, well, what am I doing here? Do I belong here? Yeah. And in New
Yeah.
York, I never really felt that. I felt like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I mean, there's the Black population, there's the, you know, the Latinx population, there are all of these immigrant populations, and everybody is concerned about their own ambitions, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an identity for all of the drawbacks it has. It kind of allows you to transcend in some way,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the burden of your race or the burden of your ethnicity. I mean,
Yeah.
not totally, of course, and it varies with different people, and, you know, and it's a very classist society here, and, you know,
It
has all,
is.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
The
it's
gaps.
really, you know, I'm not saying that this is the city on the hill or anything like that, but, you know, it does happen to be a place where I felt about at ease as I've
Comes
ever
across. Yeah.
felt.
It comes
Yeah.
across. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think there is another square that may be bet.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. There are some questions, so I figured I would pass them along.
Okay.
The first one is from Nell Painter. Vijay, what happens if that brown bear is a she?
Okay. Let me just go
Yeah.
over here for a second.
You know, I think the bear in its bareness, in its barehood, if you would put it that way, the idea of the poem is that there is something about the life of that creature in nature which is very, very different than, I mean, I'm just taking a stab at this because I have never really thought about it. And, you know, and there are poets in whom there is a lot of, you know, gender bending and kind of considerations of gender issues. And I don't know if I'm that kind of poet at all. I mean, I think there's a sort of multiplicity and aspects of the work that I do that encompasses the experience of others, but always from my own positionality, you know. So I don't think it would have been false for me in that poem to turn the bear into a female bear. It would have felt wrong just from my writerly point of view. But the question as to whether it would make any difference to the poem, I would have to say no, you know, that in some sense the opposition there is between the divided human living in a constructed social world which has you know, elements that are really disturbing, and a world in which whatever the bear is kind of living in a state of unity. I mean, that might be a tremendous romanticization of animal life and stuff like that. And, you know, if you've seen that Werner Herzog film, Grizzly Man, you have a
I've seen that.
sense of the way bears live, which is quite a bit different than, you know, that very romanticized idea, you know. But, you know, the interesting thing now about that question is that it is on my mind in that in this sense that the bear exists in order rhetorically to create a contrast, in order to sort of indict in some way the human world. And where differences in gender really do make a difference, right? They're not orchestrated by the necessities of survival. They're kind of a part of a surplus economy. And I mentioned my piece about Bangladesh, and it's really, you know, it's considering the same sort of themes, even though it's a piece of prose and it has all sorts of journalistic elements from the other side of my historical experience, which is South Asia, you know, and the most kind of traumatized part of South Asia.
Yeah.
You know, Bangladesh now and Bangladesh in its history, you know, from partition to the War of Independence to, you know, The Estuary is a global warming poem, and, you know, and what I'm writing about Bangladesh very much has to do with what's happening now.
Okay. I'll get you.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, the next question's for Ursula, so I hope you're okay there, dear.
My husband needed some help. Just a second.
All right.
Okay, I'll help you up.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
If I can roll onto all fours, I can get
Yeah.
up on my own.
Do you want me to get the chair over here?
I'll get back to what you're doing.
Vijay, do you have a, while Ursula is settling herself, do you have a up and coming author that you know about that you think we should know about?
Go back.
Do you know off the top of your head that you can?
Okay.
Okay.
You know, you know, I mean, this is sort of, you know, patting myself on the back. But I judged a prize recently, the Anthony Heck Prize. And I gave it to a young poet named Danielle Blau. And I think the book is coming out in April. And
B-L-A-U, Blau?
D-A-N-I-E-L-L-E, B-L-A-U.
B-L-A-U, okay.
Yeah, and the book is called Peep, P-E-E-P. And I commend it to everyone. You know, remarkably, you know, just a terrific linguistic and imaginative talent. And it's one of those first books that leaps out at you. I mean, manuscript of I think maybe 12 manuscripts I was given that I had to choose among. And they were all excellent. This one was extraordinary. So, and she's someone people hardly know about, although she's, you know, one of these young people, like, you know, there are all these young people around now.
There are, and I can't find all of them. So I always ask the authors if there's somebody on their radar that I might not have heard of, because, you know, clearly I'm a bookseller and I want to know about what other people are talking about other than booksellers. I do have a question for Ursula, and I was going to ask Deb if she wanted to come on screen and ask it, but she may or may not want to. So I will. The question for Ursula as a linguist, and this is from Deb Fallows. I have noticed that there is a phonetic change going on in English. It's about consonant clusters with S like ST, STR, as in strike, star, etc. ST/STR are becoming pronounced SHT, and SHTR as START or STRIKE. As a German speaker, have you noticed that there is a phonetic change? I mean, did I explain it well enough? How does this?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
also written down on the side with all the comments. So
Oh, good. I'm glad. Oh,
which
that's
is-
right. She did. She copied
which
it.
is
She started
which
there.
is helpful. No, Deb, I have not noticed it, but there are so many pronunciations floating around, not just connected to the German language, but I'm different ways of approaching words, different words of saying them. So I have not been aware of it, but I think from now on I'll be more aware of it, perhaps. I'm so used to having, I mean, not a whole lot anymore, but once in a while. My oldest son's name is Eric, and people say Elik, and I say no, Eric. They say Elik. No, it's ERIC, okay, which comes out as Elik. That's probably the funniest one. But my second child, I did not name with an R in the name, protected him from that.
Let me see. Deb wanted to ask you some more, so let me see if I can bring her on. Nope. Let me see if Deb. I'm inviting her to the screen, so we'll see if Deb can make it. She really kind of wanted to dig into the linguistic side of your journey. If it comes up, it comes up. Do you have an author that you want to put on our radar, Ursula? Is there somebody that comes off the top of your head?
Yeah, she's not new. I mean, we sort of grew up in this. We were in the graduate program at the University of New Hampshire, and she is a wonderful writer. Her name is Barbara Wright, WRIGHT. She's written one book called Plain Language.
Got it.
She also has a young adult book. But she's a wonderful writer.
For those of you who don't know Deborah Fallows, I invited her on because I couldn't explain the linguistic side of this. Deb, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes, this is something I've noticed in the media. I am going to ruin the future for all of you who are listening, because instead of hearing people on the media say things like stop or snow or strike or strong, you will hear stop, snow, strike, strong. And so the S becomes an SH sound. It is ubiquitous. I think it starts because linguistically it's much easier. What you were talking about, Ursula, of where you put your tongue when you're articulating, it's much easier to put the tongue in the same place. It kind of slides in like st. If you say st, you have to move your tongue back. So it's a very efficient phonetic change that's going on. It's like German. German was already there. And once it gets into the language and you have a lot of public places or charismatic people or popular people or familiar people starting to say it, everybody copycats. So there you go. Listen for it. Listen for it, and it will drive you crazy.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you.
Well, the one question that I have to ask to round out the very kind of uneven hour, and again, I apologize for my end of the technology problems. It's really, but
We
it's
got it.
the life we
We
live.
got it.
And I thought your conversation was so wonderful and insightful, and I really loved it. And so I will ask my last question, and I need to know, what are you reading right now? What book are you reading right now?
They're
Because
all
everybody
German. Yeah, they're all German right now because I found out about a group of children called Wolf Children, Wolfskinder, and they were children after 1945 who had lost their parents or their community, and they were living off the land. They were often in groups or hordes of 7 or 8, taking care of one another. It's this whole thing again with refugees, okay? Those of us who are pushed out or who leave or who are lost, and those are really lost kids. And all of a sudden, there is a lot of nonfiction information on them, and I'm reading a lot in the Spiegel about them. But I'm fascinated, totally fascinated by that concept that at a time where things were supposed to get better again, people coming together, and the end of the horrible war for those kids, it was just beginning.
Wow.
But if you're interested in that, there's some stuff in English too. Wolf Children.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vijay, what are you reading?
Well, over the past 4 days, I was out of town. I was reading Ban en banlieue by Banu Kapil, the British Indian writer, and Peter Handke's A Sorrow Beyond Dreams about
I like him. Yeah.
mother. It's a wonder. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Both are very beautiful books. And
I'm taking notes.
yeah.
He has one earlier one called Autobiography of My Mother.
Right.
And it's such an interesting angle of vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's good writer.
Yeah, no, he's an interesting writer.
Yeah.
Sort of,
Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up tonight and say goodbye. I can't thank you enough. And thank you to Betsy, well, for trying as hard as she could to get on, and to Ursula and Vijay for sharing their work and inspiring all of us, and for you for participating in Write America this evening. And thank you to Roger Rosenblatt for creating this original and important series to look forward to each Monday evening. We hope we will see you this Wednesday at 7 p.m. for Write America's special episode as we welcome Billy Collins and Robert Reeves as they honor the life and work of Frank McCourt. Please remember to check out Bird's Book's Write America page, where you can sign up for other episodes or purchase a book. Thank you all. Have a good evening.